I noticed there was a thing you were doing with language earlier when you were talking about the types of promises that are made with monogamous relationships and with polyamorous relationships. And I think that perhaps when they were simple promises, you called them oaths or covenants, and I think regarded them positively. When they were promises that needed a lot of detail and compromise in specific languages, you called them contracts and likened them to prenuptial agreements. I think that's a little unfair because there are so many details and promises that come along with the monogamous "I will marry you" oath that we all understand through our culture. Yeah. Sorry, it wasn't so much a question, but
no, it's a great point. No, so that's a really good point. You're absolutely right. So the language of contract came from a very detailed set of rules that a polyamorous couple had and put up on their website as a model for other polyamorous couples. And very interestingly, actually, one of them said, "I show this to any potential couple that might come into this polyamorous relationship and make them read it and sign it," which is, to me, a sort of legally binding contract. It's absolutely true that oaths involve a lot of details of any sort, whether those are polyamorous or monogamous. The difference seems to be that it's a basic rule that in a system, the more components you add to the system, the more degrees of complexity that you have. If you have 3 people in a room, there are more relational dynamics going on than there are if you have 2 people in a room. And those additional relational dynamics, economic obligations, etc., require a greater degree of foresight and increase the financial and legal risk of everyone involved, and will increase the legal burden if polyamorous relationships ever were inscribed into law in order to navigate all of these things effectively. All it is a point about the additional complexity. Additional complexity seems like it changes the degree of the oath away from a sort of, or at least it brings all that complexity up to the surface in adding degrees or layers to it, I think is what I would say. Yeah.
Do you want to add anything about polyamorous?
Sure. My suspicion is that there's sort of 2 layers of agreements that one makes in life. I mean, there are oaths that are sort of these large oaths of, "I will be with you forever," the sort of marriage oath that one may make. And then there are the sort of underlying agreements that are more detailed. And what maybe, and I see, I mean, I'm familiar with sort of these polyamorous contracts, and I think that people who are not polyamorous or aren't too familiar with it often think these are deal breaker contracts, that you have to do this or I won't love you anymore, or I won't be with you anymore. And typically over time, I mean, they come up for negotiation. And so, I mean, one has this level of oath-taking, which legally and culturally we don't offer, like wonderful moments like a wedding for polyamorous people to make these large oaths, these large unconditional oaths to one another. But underneath, there's a lot of negotiation that goes on of, I need this, and a lot of talking about needs from which that contract emerges, and I think from which a great deal of attachment and care and love is created.
Yeah, can I just add one more thing to that? Yeah, I think that's right. It seems like one of the advantages of the sort of big scale oaths is that it leaves the future open in a way that some of the polyamorous contracts do not, and which is why I'm opposed to prenups. And, I mean, again, monogamous people set the foundation for this with prenuptials. Part of the deal with marriage is you make this big scale oath and it leaves the future open such that you don't have to work out all the details of what's going to happen in 50 years. What you know is, whatever happens in 50 years, it's you and me, through thick and thin, come hell or high water. And the simplicity of that allows you to figure out those details, not necessarily up front, but as you go. Because you're marrying a person, not the particular situation that the person is in.
Questions?